Hello, this is Francois, and I've been away for a bit because I was now doing some SharePoint development. So SharePoint has evolved a lot, and we are now in this modern view, as you can see everywhere. Great. So let's take this simple list with a few columns I've created, field 1, 2, 3. It just looks like this, right? So a form with just some simple fields. I'm just going to put some test here, test 2, so that we know what we are seeing when we are testing. And then what we have is maybe a status which obviously can be moved using Power Automate. I wouldn't do it this way, I would just do it through Power Automate. And sometimes it goes, as soon as you start a workflow, it will go under review, then it will progress. Okay, so that's a form. Not looking so great because this has been the same thing for 20 years in SharePoint. So now what we can do is to improve the look. And of course, you have a few options. We could design it in Power Apps, but now we also have the configure layout. So let me talk to you about this. Few options. We have the header, the body, and the footer. So let's start with body, because in the body, I will be able to, I can't do a lot of things to be fair, but I'm able to organize all my fields inside a section. Okay, so let's pause here. You can see that I have a weird, let's say, formatting here. This comes from a plugin, which is the SP formatter settings. So if I didn't have it, that's what it looks like, right? And here you don't really have choice than just typing your code by yourself. So you would have to really know your JSON and type it here. Using the plugin, I can do the same, but I have a little bit more feature. So for instance, I can enhance and I can make this bigger. So for instance, I'm going to maybe define a section and I can start my code already, and it's kind of suggesting, or it's helping me to build something. So look, it's already suggesting me that I could put some section, and all I do is just enter, and then it's suggesting me the next step. So in my section, I could say, okay, I want to have a display name, but then I need to know a lot of these things. And to be fair, I didn't invent it, right? So what I'd like to do is just to do no code, low code. So I will show you where I got my sample just in GitHub. If you find the PNP, you will find lots of form samples. And within this list, you may be interested by, for instance, I'm going to look at the header in a minute, but maybe I want to see something in the body. So we'll do into, this is form sample. Yeah, let's have a look at this header, maybe status. And then it tells you like some example where it looks like every time you change the header, you have a new style. And then from that, you can build up and make your own way. Okay. The next thing I like with obviously this extension, and that's the whole point of it, is that now we're going to bring Visual Studio. So let's have a look. Here I have a Visual Studio window, and as you can see, I have now created the section exactly here. So I'm saying section, display name, 1 section, 2 section, and then another one that is recommended. Most developers always say, look, keep another one for everything else, because if you have a field number 4, 5, 6, it will come as the last one if you didn't define it in a section. So what's the point of doing it in Visual Studio now? Well, I'm going to move it around here, okay? So let's try to see everything on the same place. So if I move my Visual Studio, yes, around here, that's good. So on the right hand side, I have the code that I want to add. So I'm not just going to copy and paste it. That would be one way, but actually there's another one that is super cool. You just right click in Visual Studio, and then I'm going to start a new session. So what it does is connecting to your local browser, and then all you may have to do is to disable and then re-click enable. Can you see now? It says connected, but I come back to my Visual Studio, you will see the change in real time. So for instance, this one, instead of start, I'm going to say information. And in fact, I can add a little emoji, info. So I'm going to put a little I here. And then the other one, I have details. So maybe I'm going to put, how about something that looks like a document? Document. Here we go. So I'm updating this JSON, but in Visual Studio. Why? Because then you may have some help in Visual Studio that is not going to be coming from SharePoint, right? You can see like some drop down and suggestion. Okay, so that's really cool. So it means that the body is done. Now, what you have to be careful is not to switch header or footer because we are still connected. So I'm going to have to close the current session. So now we are still in the body. I would say save it as well, but anyway, now we can switch to header. Oh, and you see it was still connected. So I don't really like it fully. Header is going to be around here before the form, but let's have a look. Let's save it. I would close because we have lots of issues with cache and not understanding that we, okay, I'm gonna, that's interesting that it wasn't reduced earlier. Oh yeah. So the header hasn't been saved, but the body hasn't been saved. Okay. So let's make sure it's still going to be done. So we're going to start new session, disable and enable. So now we are good. Advantage is that you can drag it. You can see a little mini map here, so we can move the code easily. And let's save for the body. Save it. Okay, I'm going to close the form as well. And before I open in the JSON, I make sure I'm going to close the current session, because once I click on the form and then I go to my configure layout, the first one open is header. So if I was connected, it will take the code straight away and just screw up with my header. Okay, let's have a look at body. I can see that we have sections, so it should be displayed here, right? There's no reason why it's not displayed, but it's one of the quirks. Every now and then you will see some issues here. Now you see I disable and enable, it is displayed, so just weird. And then let's have a look at the footer. It shouldn't be showing this because my footer is actually empty. So you just have to toggle this settings to really see what's going on. Okay, so we are good. We are done. Let's just play a bit with the header then. So header is empty. For my header, I'm going to use, well, one of this web page was telling me that I could use this nice footer and then a header. That's a great idea. So let's do something for header. Okay, so we're going to find some code that I already prepared in my header, but basically you are defining the same as the div, the style. So all the CSS, I noticed that I would prefer to use background color than a font color, because font color is going to have to be defined as this identifier, which is only some Microsoft class. And that's a bit annoying because the color is slightly different from the RGB that you can really be free to use. So look what I'm doing here. I'm saying, okay, depending on my status, I actually use the proper RGB code. And that's a bit better because then RGB is the exact color. Okay, so I'm changing the background color of my status. And then over there is just to display some text. So for instance, I'm going to show the status and then some transparent color and things like this. Okay. Let's go back to SharePoint. So of course, I need to make sure I'm in header. Then I want to enhance it, but I will have to toggle again this. So let's connect Visual Studio. Boom. Toggle. Oh, this time it works straight away. Toggle. And then now you can see the result. So if I go ahead and click on status, it's not going to save my header, right? So it's not going to work. It will work for this instance, but when you close the form, it's not saving it in the code. So you got it. We're going to disconnect. And now I save it. Let's double check. I need to close, open the form, see that, okay, great. The body has the section and the top has the header. Okay, now we can play with the status and see if it's really reacting. Nice. All right. And obviously we're going to do the same with the footer. Okay, so footer, we're going to do the same. Configure layout. Come on. Ah, can you see? So sometimes it doesn't click. It's because I've been messing up with the JSON a few times, and this configure layout, you need to close it. It just sometimes doesn't work. Sometimes you may have to refresh the whole page. So development with this is a little bit convoluted because it's, I wouldn't say unstable, but you got me. Okay, so again, I disable enable so that I make sure that the footer is empty. And I'm going to go to my Visual Studio. You can see that I have prepared some code here. So similar to what I would be saying. So I'm just typing here some create a date, a little bit of like create a date is basically the year, a little bit of the title, who submitted it. Oh, and then I want to change the background because then it's going to look good. So the great thing is this line is exactly the same as the header that I was putting before. So here is the advantage of using style instead of font as well. I just use exactly the same RGB. Okay, so let's connect, start a new session over there. This time it didn't do it. So disable, enable, here we go. And now we have the nice footer. So again, let's save it, making sure that we close the form, making sure, never know, that we close the current session, and now we test with new item, etc. And then you can see that is going to change. Okay, brilliant. So now I'm going to pause here to say this is enough for me to design. But there's a few things, there's a few quirks to know because I've been really breaking my teeth on this for the past few days. So I would like to show you. All right, first comment. If we're again in the configure layout, it's not coming, so we need to close, open. It's not coming probably because I stopped the connection. We don't know. All right, let's enlarge the code because this time I'm just going to change a slight thing in the code here, not in Visual Studio. But remember that if you do so, copy it, paste it in Visual Studio so your Visual Studio files are the backup of all this. So if anyone who has contributor access mess up with it, well, designer access, in fact, to this, you can replace it. Okay, so what I want to change is the body, and very annoying, and I want, for instance, to say, well, actually field number 2, can you see, is before field number 3, and then there's long text. Well, basically you can see that it doesn't matter the order as it is, because even if I say so I say that there's field 2 here, then make sure there's a comma. That's the advantage again on having this enhanced formatter. It tells you that there's an error. He doesn't care about the order of the field. So first conclusion, what you are writing here is only to place them inside the section. It's not to give them a certain order. All right, important. So let's cancel that because it doesn't really use the order. If you want to change the order, now you need to change it. Careful with this because you could think you need to change it into configure layout, into edit column, right? So we go in the edit column and then we're like, okay, I want to change my field to, actually this one, wanted to make it into after the field 3. So you change it here. Maybe you put it even longer after the long text. Great. But then what happened is, it's weird, right? Field number 1 is not going in information. That's a bit odd. Could be a few reasons. Field number 1 is actually title. The system name of this field is called title. So if it was title, it will go under information. But you can't always guarantee that your developer has been doing this. So the way to do it really, because especially that if I click on save, then it could mess up with all my code again. So if I change this, look at this. Information now is all messed up, right? It's not in the correct section. So it means that in configure layout, if I go to the body, I can see that my fields here are empty. Super annoying because I wanted to have the status here instead of nothing really. So here I'm going to put the field number 1, which is again a good reason for saving this code in your Visual Studio. So you just have to connect and it will be back here. But again, that's not enough because my order of fields, maybe I had field 2 and in different order, it has been messed up now. So the way to change this is not actually in the edit column, but we need to go in the source of SharePoint, which is the list settings. Then we have a look at the column ordering, unless you have a site content type. Then you click on the content type and then column ordering again. And finally, this is where you change the order. So let's have a look. We knew that field 2, we want it to be after field 3. So now field 3 is going to be number 2, and then this one is number 3. So let's save that. And let's have a look at the form again. And remember that column ordering has nothing to do with field ordering, has nothing to do with column ordering. So this is a different order, right, that you can just drag and drop. Okay, so back to the form. If it wants to open, here we go. So field 3 is now before field 2 because we've done it in the content type or in the list settings, and it's going to keep it this way. Nice. All right, so I'm going to pause here again because I think that's enough we need to understand how everything is going to be laid out using these two things and how they all kind of confuse each other. The configure layout and the edit column. Hope it was useful. The next one I'm going to do is how to display and hide some fields depending on condition.